Running on Air by 11ty7. Chapter 14. Harry sits in the passenger side of the Renault for a long time, listening to the engine tick as it cools. At first, he's still angry and begins mentally preparing the long rant he plans to deliver upon Draco's return. But an hour passes and still Draco doesn't reappear, and soon Harry's anger melts into regret as he replays the argument. Draco had been irritable and snippish right from the start, but so had Harry. It could have been a simple miscommunication. "Oh, I'm not angry with you," Draco could have said. But a little voice of reason adds, "You could have been clearer too." Harry flushes guiltily, thinking how the argument had reminded him of their schoolyard rivalry. He'd been quick to feel defenses and take every remark as an insult. Now that he analyzes the entire argument, he thinks that he would have interpreted Draco's comment about Neville as a harmless joke or even a playful jest had Ron or Hermione said it. Well, he won't apologize, he thinks stubbornly. Draco hadn't been reasonable either, after all. Harry might take a little blame, but only, for example, a quarter. No more, no less. When 2 hours have passed since Draco disappeared, Harry grimaces when he thinks of what he said. "At least I have friends." That had not been fair at all, Harry thinks, feeling ashamed. It's just Draco had sounded a lot like he used to whenever they were slinging insults at Hogwarts, and even though Draco's expression had been anger rather than a smirk, Harry had just sort of responded automatically with a personal insult. Maybe he'll take half the blame, but no more. When 3 hours have passed since Draco disappeared, Harry thinks he'll accept all the blame. Sits in a driver's seat and places his hands on the wheel. He stares unseeingly at the road atlas. He leaves the car and paces restlessly around it. "Come back and I'll apologize," he thinks desperately. "I don't mind saying sorry if you're here." But Draco doesn't come back. Come nightfall, Harry drives back to Landitneck. It's a reluctant journey. He can't stop worrying. He's worried over many things during his life. The knot of fear and anxiety in his stomach is certainly not unfamiliar. He knows the feeling, whether from things like his first Quidditch match or the challenges of the Triwizard Tournament, whether from the safety of his friends or the future of Hogwarts students during the persecution of Muggleborns. But it's certainly new to be worrying about Draco Malfoy. Before he leaves, Harry carves the coordinates for Landitneck into a fence post, hoping that if Draco returns to the spot he will be able to locate Harry. Still, it's a long and lingering departure. Harry keeps thinking, "I'll just wait another minute." And then, when the minute passes without sign of Draco, he thinks, "Just another minute." At long last, he leaves. But even if he starts the engine and he turns the indicator on, he's vainly hoping for Draco to reappear. But the nondescript and empty patch of road slowly disappears in the rear vision mirror as Harry drives away. In Landitneck, he finds a boutique guest house close to the coastal walking track. It appears to be of markedly higher quality than the other places they've stayed. The receptionist chatters brightly to Harry about the weather and gives him the key for the room. "You're on the second floor, on the eastern side," she says cheerfully. "Breakfast is served from 7 to 9. We have maps and brochures available for your perusal. Enjoy your stay." "Thanks." Harry pauses. "I'm waiting for another guest to arrive, actually. Just in case." "Tonight? We close in an hour." "Tomorrow. Maybe the day after." "Oh, would you like to book another room then? Your current suite is a twin share." "No, that's fine." He gives her Draco's name and she assures him she'll send him through if he arrives. Harry finds his room with little difficulty. Draco would like it, he thinks. There's an expansive view over the emerald green fields leading to the dramatic drop of the cliffs. The ocean, bright in the setting sun of midsummer, looks tranquil and gentle, a far cry from the lashing waves of winter that last greeted Harry on this coast. There are 2 double beds. He chooses the bed closest to the window, trailing a hand along the crisp linen. There's very little to unpack. A few sets of clothing he bought in Hopper's Crossing, a wash bag with a toothbrush, razor, and a comb. Still, Harry spends a long time rearranging the items. When he's exhausted that activity, he roams the small room. There's a little balcony, an armchair in the corner of the room, a small writing desk in the other. He's trying to distract himself, he knows. It's futile. Goes to a nearby pub for dinner, but he returns just an hour later, unable to enjoy himself despite a pleasant meal and scenic walk back to the guest house. The receptionist seems to guess at his question before he says a word. "No guests," she says. Harry nods and walks tiredly to his room. He wakes early before sunrise. He stands on the balcony and looks out across the dark line of the Cornish coast. The pre-dawn air is crisp with a salted ocean breeze, but soon it will be tempered by a warm summer day. It's the 17th of June, Harry remembers. The 5th of June. Today Draco arrived on his doorstep, tossed his cloak casually across the kitchen counter and said, "Come for a drive." It had been Draco's birthday. He would have turned 25. In the east, over the dark cliffs and the summer-thoused sea, the sky lightens. Just a little. Harry spends the morning walking along the coastal track. It's not the same, he thinks. He liked it better during his earlier visits, when the winter winds howled through the crumbling cliff edges and the waves lashed across craggy rocks, and the sea sung a fierce song to a crescent moon. Now the land is bright and green, the sea sparkling beneath the light of summer. The abandoned holiday houses are filled once more with sunburned faces and laughing voices. As Harry follows the meandering track, he passes by at least 3 couples, a young family and an elderly man with an equally elderly terrier. He turns his face to the cloudless blue sky. He wishes it was winter again. Or maybe he wishes it was night. Or maybe he wishes it was 3 o'clock in the morning, and if he looks to his left he'll see Draco there. "I wanted to see where the land ended," Draco will say. Harry drops his gaze from the sky and looks west to the Celtic Sea. Somewhere across the horizon, across the ceaseless tides and winding currents, it will meet the North Atlantic Ocean. And all the oceans meet each other, and all the land becomes a never-ending constellation circling the world. Maybe he just wishes Draco was here. Harry has responsibilities, things he left behind, people waiting for him. He doesn't want Hermione or Ron to worry, of course, and he wants to send them another owl, let them know he's all right. But he finds himself caring very little about everything else. That night he stands on a little balcony and rests his hand on the wrought iron railing, just to feel something solid. As if he's trying to ground himself, as if electricity is pouring through him. He's not really sure he wants to be an Auror anymore. He always wanted to, back when he was 16 and coded the world according to simple dualities. Good or bad, black or white, better or worse. But of course, there is no dualities. Just degrees of differences. It's a shame it took him so long to learn that. Another early start the next day. Wakes up just after sunrise. It's still another hour before breakfast is served, and he whiles away the time gazing out across the cliffs. It's all he ever seems to do, stand on a balcony and stare at the world. Trains and cliffs and lights and oceans. Goes downstairs at 7 and takes an hour to eat breakfast. His appetite seems to have vanished. He wonders if he should go back home, but there is no home. The apartment is nothing more than a box in the sky. Hogwarts, his first home, his real childhood home, is forever gone, accessible only by memory. It's home to 1,000 other children now, and it's a bittersweet thought. And everywhere else in his life he's merely been a visitor, a stranger. He may have lived with the Dursleys for 17 years, but it was never home. He may have considered the Burrow his home too. The people have long gone. Ginny always travelling, the rest all moved out or married, and the rooms are empty. He doesn't belong anywhere. Except, maybe, in a Renault Megane, burning down the M27 at midnight, tracing the lines of relationships across the land. In the evening, Harry drives. Or maybe he's not driving, maybe he's searching. For Draco, for a memory, for a state of mind, for home, for anywhere and everywhere. He drives along in winding country roads past fields still tipped with sunlight in the late sunset of summer. The coast disappears behind him, the wind-blown cliffs giving way to open grassland. Harry can see the bright light of the sun in his rearview mirror, a brilliant and final spark of defiance streaming across the horizon. Soon the bright sunset has faded to little more than a fingerprint of pale purple, soft bruise across the sky. In the south the moon is a pale ghost in the faint light of dusk, and the first stars appear. That's what Harry's always missed. When he lived in London, the smog-thick night never gave him a sky full of stars. He returns to Llandudneck, driving through a narrow street. Past the church with the kissing gate, the small cottages, the bridge crossing a small inlet. The guest house, a restored country estate, sits at the end of a meandering lane, set against the backdrop of the Cornish coast. Although the night is still young, most of the windows are dark. The other guests will already be asleep, preparing for early beach walks and trips to the nearby coves. Harry parks the Renault and makes his way past the reception, up 2 flights of stairs, and to his empty room. Later on that night, he leaves again to follow the winding thread of the southwest coastal track. The sun is long set. Smiling couples and elderly dog walkers have long since retreated to their cozy beds in distant dream. There's a wide curve of a cliff nearby. Could be the same one he visited in Draco's memories, but Harry doesn't care to revisit it. Instead, he follows the slow descent of the path until he's standing in a sheltered cove. The shallow water washes gently over the silt and sand before retreating again, and Harry's reminded of how the ocean sometimes feels like an echo of his pulse. He takes off his shoes and lets the waves crash over his feet. Farther out, the waves curl until they crest and crash, rushing inland until nothing more than rippled tide reaches Harry. He should go home, he thinks. Buy a new apartment. Buy 100 apartments, it doesn't matter. They all look the same. Go and return to his old job. Arrest dark magic users, greedy criminals, pureblood zealots, desperate teenagers, people needing quick money. It doesn't matter. They all look the same. Before Draco, he knew exactly what he wanted. Maybe that's why he feels a little angry at Draco, Harry thinks. People can't just step into his life, change it, and step back out again. But past the anger, Harry thinks despairingly, is fear. It's terrifying to realize how much control Draco has over his life. With a handful of memories and a few conversations, he can change Harry's perspective. With a midnight road trip, he can make Harry feel amazingly alive. With a brief argument and a quick disapparition, he can make Harry worry for days. The reception will be closed, Harry thinks. It doesn't matter. He'll disapparate. As the moon reaches its zenith and begins its almost imperceptible descent, he vanishes with a faint